So this is the FDL-3 nose. More specifically, this is the FDL-40 nose. In this video, I'm going to show you how to build it. Let's go. So you might be asking yourself, what is an FPV drone channel doing with a foam dart launcher? Well, many of you know I've gotten into 3D printing, and there's a certain marriage between FPV and 3D printing. This is epitome of that marriage. The reason being is because this guy runs off of not one, but two 2206 2450 kV motors running at full speed, throwing darts out of the muzzle of this guy. So you can bet, as soon as I saw this, I knew it needed to be built. So just a little bit of background here. I'm not the authority on the FDL-3. This is the first one I've built, but I am good at building things. I am good with electronics. It's just what I do. So follow along, and let's get this guy built together. So if you are an FDL-3 veteran and you see me doing something wrong, please comment below so we can help out people who are new to this, including myself. But much of this, I have read the directions on to how to put this together. As far as the PC boards, they are very self-explanatory, and just following the bill of materials, this to me is a very easy build. So rest assured that if you follow this video, you should have no problem building this. If not, hit up the comments below and we'll get you through it. But this is the front nose. This is the 40 nose. There are other noses. This specifically takes the 40 mags, and I'm assuming that's for a 40 round magazine. This is the larger of the noses. If you build some of the smaller ones, know that some of the 3D printed parts will be a little bit different, but for the most part, the orientation of everything is similar. So I say that because I don't plan on building each nose for a video. So hopefully this one helps you out. And there's that. So let's get this guy built. Okay, so the very first thing that we're going to do is grab our motors. And I tell you what, I'm going to go buy a couple more of these. These are some sexy looking motors. These are the Luminaire Frybot MB2206 2450 kV. These, I don't even know. Like, these must be on the end of their lifespan, but these just look damn good. So the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to add the quick connectors to our motors. And you don't need to do this, but I just feel that in a project such as this, any little thing that you do like this is going to make it a lot easier. So what we're going to do is, if we take these are little 2mm banana clips, and if we put them in the end there, you'll see a little bit of wire sticking through. So I'm just going to nip just like a 1/16 of an inch off the tips of these wires. And these are how they came stock. So you don't need to trim your wires to any specific length, just as long as they fit inside of that. So with those trimmed, as you can see, this will fit nicely inside of there, and then we can solder it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the 2mm banana, place it there, grab one of our motor wires, and place it in the other gripper. And I'm just going to feed this together and just briefly touch them. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to hold my soldering iron, after I clean it up, on top of the banana clip here. And that's going to warm it up. And then as long as my wire is touching, you can see it starts feeding in solder inside of the banana clip. What I'm going to do is just hold on the banana, and that'll solidify. All right, once you have those on, we can cut. These are about 1/2 inch shrink tube, And just go ahead and put these on and shrink them down. Now we're gonna come right to there's an edge of a flat spot here. We're gonna come right to that. So it's about an 1/8 inch down from the top here, almost the same length as the shrink tube that we're using here. And sometimes you might have a little blob of solder here. You're gonna wanna clean that up a little bit. So I'm gonna wait on that one. I'm gonna hit these two and come back to that. All right, so once you've got your 6 banana clips soldered on and heat shrunk, go ahead and grab 8 cap head screws. These are M3 by 6mm. And go ahead and grab the 2 parts that look like this. What we're gonna do is there's kind of a flat side and then there's kind of a concave side on this dome shaped piece. We want to work with the flat side, and as you can see, the motor fits right into these slots there. And we're gonna install the motor just like that. So what I do is take this stuff here. This is just a little bit of blue Loctite and coat the threads a little bit. And we're gonna place this guy right through there. And line up our motor hole. Now when we do this, and I'll flip this piece over and show you in a moment, you'll see that there's a little cutout here. We want our motor wires coming out so they go into that cutout. And repeat this process for the remaining 4. I'm just putting them in loose until I get all 4, and then I will star pattern them in. Okay, once they're all in, tighten them down. Remember, we're just threading in aluminum. These are small screws, so I'm just giving a quick little tighten, and we're good. Once that one's set, you can do the same with the reverse side. All right, for these next steps, grab your 4x40. These are 1 3/4 cap head screws. And then grab 4 nylocks. And also go ahead and grab 2 of your flywheels. What we're gonna do is install the flywheels on the motors first. And the way these go is there's a little indentation, and then these parts kind of lock onto your motor. You want the flat side away from your motor. So go ahead and place that on top just like that. And then find the space where it locks on the top of your motor. Once you do that, put the nut on there and then go ahead and tighten her down. And according to their directions, we want to tighten this down without squishing the plastic and without stripping the motor shaft, but relatively tight. So somewhere around there should be good. And repeat the process for the second one. Nice fit there. And if you're making your own flywheels, I believe, I'm not positive, I believe that they have these balanced. I will annotate this if they are in fact balanced. I need to find that out. And the reason why I say that is because, as you can see, there's little marks here, so I wonder if they have shaved this down somewhere. There's no indication that they have done anything with it, but there are marks. And it doesn't look accidental because this one's got some too, so I'm not quite sure what they did to balance these, but I'm going to assume that they're balanced. I did not print these. These are ABS, by the way. All these other parts are PETG that I printed, so just know that these are purchased, as I don't print with ABS yet. So for this next step, we're going to want these 3 pieces. You can see these guys are shaped like this. We want these, and then we're going to also want, we're going to also want the barrel, which looks like this. So what we're going to do here is there's a nice little slotted section. Move my focus, there we go. Yeah, there you can see it right there. The nice little slotted section, and then this has a nice little nub to it that fits nicely right into that slotted section, just like that. And then repeat that with the top one, so you end up with a squared off section. And I apologize for printing this in black. I just happen to really like the black. Once this thing starts coming together, you'll understand why. But it doesn't make for a very good demonstration. So I do apologize for that. So now, these guys, as you can see, these are going to be very tight going into here. So it's up to you if you want to run a drill through here. It looks like it's fine to do that. I don't think I'm going to. I'm going to start planting these screws and see. Now, for this next step, we want to pay attention. There's 2 different sides here. We've got a side here that has hex demarcations, and this is going to be for our nylocks are going to sit right in here. Something like that, nice and flat. So that's one side. And then on the other side, it is rounded. So we want to pay close attention to that. The other thing that we want to pay attention to is one side of these have points, just like this, and then the other side is flat. So it's going to go onto this piece. This is a magazine receiver here. And if I check this out like this, you can see that we want the flat section to mate with this. So that tells me the pointed sections go forwards and the flat sections go backwards. The other easy way to tell is we want our wires to come off the back of this to mate with this channel here. So I'm going to place this one right here. As you can see, it fits fairly nicely, just like that. So now I'm going to take one of these guys and run it through the top. And I'm not going to run it all the way. I am going to stop just before I come out the other side. And this is going fairly easy, so unless you want this to just drop in, you don't need to screw this or drill this out. That is totally up to you. It's just enough that I need a screwdriver to do this with. I can actually do this with my fingers too, so it's not bad. So I'm just going to run this screw right to the edge there, and then do the same with this screw here. And it is definitely easier to start with a bit driver. Okay, there's our screws right to the ends. And now this motor, as you can see, we want to coincide with this hogged out portion and this one. So this one's going to go facing down with the points facing forwards and this flat section and the wires facing backwards. And this guy, I find it's easiest here to put the flywheel in position and then just kind of roll the rest of it right into place, just like that. So now I'm going to take one of these screws and run it into the other plate, just like that. And what I'm noticing, because this is tight, nope, not going to matter. Good. So once you get that run in like that, take the nut and flatten it out in place, hold it in place, and tighten into it. And just get her snug. And get these guys pretty snug. And then go ahead and check that your motors spin freely, which mine do. Okay, for this next step, we want to determine left and right on the barrel, and we also want to grab the magwell. So the magwell, we're looking for, there's a giant hole here that you can kind of stick your finger in, and then there's a very small hole that you can barely stick your pinky into. So we want the giant size hole. So we're going to put that here. This is the left side. And then to denote the left side, here is the side with the nylocks. So what we're going to do here is, if you look at the front of the magwell, you'll see two square holes on either side. What we're going to do is feed the motor wires into those square holes. And because we have the banana ports on these, we might have to only do 2 at a time, but they will fit. So once we get those fed through there, we can start on the other side. Yeah, so I see this as feed 2 and then go back and then feed the final one, and they should go fairly easily. Once you get one side, and do the other side. And actually, I think this is easiest if we do it one at a time, just like that. Placing the both housings down on the table. Of course, this last one is going to screw me up here. Okay, so once that's in, go ahead and push these two pieces together. Make sure we're not pinching any of the wires. And then once that's all set, go ahead and take your 4x40 by 1 3/4 and stuff them all the way through. And these, or at least the bottom one, fit very nicely. This top one is a bit threaded. Okay, once you do that, go ahead and grab your nylocks and stick them into each hole. Hold them in place with your finger and run them all the way in. And tighten securely. And then just tighten her down. There you go. That is the motors installed in with the barrel, into the magwell, and all our wiring is up top, ready to go. And that's about as far as I can get today. All right, for this next step, we're gonna prep the ESCs. These are the SpeedX. They are a 30 amp BL-32 2-4S ESC, and these just have the ground and signal wire, and they come with a servo plug already attached. This is used in the build, so this is why people gravitate to this specific ESC in general. So to do this, I grabbed 6 of the female banana connectors, And I grabbed some spare motor wire that I had laying around, 6 wires. And we're going to do the similar thing here. I cut these down to about 1/16 of an inch. And I'm going to repeat that process for all of these. Just like that. Because these will fit just barely inside of the back of this. And if you'll notice on these, there's a little hole. That hole has nothing to do with solder. What that is that allows air to escape as you're plugging these in. You want to solder this backside that's got just a little divot. It's not a big through hole like this. So just be aware that exists. All right, so this is going to be a repeat of the process we had done earlier with the male ends. Again, we're just going to hold a bit of heat here on the wire and the connector. And once that heats up, it'll start sucking some solder in there. And there it goes. Just if you're doing this like I am, just be very careful not to drip solder on your hand, because that would hurt. Okay, that's one done. We're going to repeat this process for the remaining 5. Okay, once we got all our 6 female ends soldered to our wires, we're going to put some heat shrink. Now the difference with these is we're going to heat shrink these in their entirety right to the end. So go ahead and cut your shrink tube so that it extends just a little bit farther than, it's probably 3/8 of an inch beyond there, and covers the brass in its entirety. Because we do not want these touching each other once they are hooked up. And then just hit those with the heat gun. Do all 6. And as you can see, we bring the shrink tubing all the way to the end. I mean, there's a little bit sticking out there, but that's about as good as we're going to get. And go ahead and line up all your motor wires, and if you'd like to, you can cut them even. After that, we want to pre-tin these 3 motor pads, so grab your ESC and we can do that. And go ahead and pre-tin all your motor wires. I usually take about 2/8 off each. And once those are pre-tinned, you can go ahead and land them directly on the ESC. This one's cut just a little bit long. And don't do that, that hurt. All right, once you're set with your soldering, you can cover the ESC with the supplied shrink tubing. Okay, for this next part, we're going to populate the power board. And to do that, we're going to need a few items. First off, we're going to need our pins. And these are these guys here, breakaway male header pins. We're just going to need that one strip for this board. We will need these for the other boards. The other thing that we're going to need is this guy here. These are two 10K resistors, and the colors on these guys are brown, black, orange, and gold. We need two of them, and these are the it doesn't say, but these are the 3.5 millimeter. So if you're getting these from DigiKey, here's your part number right there. So we want two of those. And we want a MOSFET. So if you're going to DigiKey again, here is your part number. Right there. The IRL. Yeah, IRLU8. That's your part number. All right, so when populating a board such as this, we always want to start with the lowest stuff, especially if you don't have a setup where it gets it off the table like this, because you're going to be flipping it over, and if you're going to be doing the high stuff first, the board will levitate off the table and things will fall out. So we're going to start with the resistors because those are the closest to the board. And for these guys, they're just going to go in the R1 and R2 slot. And again, these are the same on either side. And I am going to put these with the gold facing to my right. And again, they don't matter, but I like to have them facing the same direction. Pop them in like that, and then what I like to do is splay them out on the other side, and then I like to solder from the back side here. So just move this one out here. Okay, and then I pull those guys a bit tight, and I put my T15 ILS back in. And we're just gonna fire these guys home. What I like to do is solder one in place and then just go back and hit it with a bit of heat and pull on the lead just to pull it right into the board. And then once that's done, then we can do the other side. Same thing here. Just hit that quick, pull it into the board. And then we can flip it over and check our soldering. Pretty good. So now here's where a set of these comes in really handy. You can clip this right close to the board. Just like that. So that's our two resistors installed. So now we're going to want to install the stuff in the center of the board. because we're going to install pins around here. These pins are going to go here, 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 and here. So I think what we're going to do is install the MOSFET first. And then in the center here, I still got to grab the, there's a voltage regulator that I got to grab. I don't have it out here. So let's go ahead and put the MOSFET in place. So as you can see with this guy here, it's got the plastic side and then the metal side. The metal side we're going to put towards this white line and just plop it right in there. And this should fit without having to splay these legs out, but I could be wrong. No, there it goes. Perfect. And just press this guy down. There's little indentations on the legs that prevent it from going any farther than that. So we're going to call that good there. And then we're going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to solder one of these legs, make sure it's in place, and then move on from there. And try not to drop it. Looks good. Let's finish it off. Very good. Once that's set, we can cut these legs. Just like that. Nice and flush to the board. Perfect. All right, for this next step, I'm going to grab these guys here, and if you see there's little indentations in between each of the plastic bits, these cut really easy. I'm going to cut a set of 2 and a set of 2. Just like that. And what I'm going to do with these is place them right in between the positive and negative, where our ESCs go. So right like that, and then the same one over there. To hold this in place, I'm just going to flip this guy over and grab it with this guy. Just like that. And then hold the board with this. Again, same thing with this one. I am definitely going to tap one leg with solder and then flip the board over and make sure it's exactly where I want it to be, because I want these plastics to sit flush on this board. Which, as you can see, this is not. So anytime you're doing this, just be careful you're not touching the pin that you're hitting with solder, because you will burn yourself. Heat travels up that pin really fast. So just like that. And if that's seated the way you want, which it's not, now it is. All right, that's better. And now we can run the other one home. Okay, then we're going to take the second one and place that right over here. Okay, that one went easier. Again, same thing with these. If you want to cut these flush, they don't stick out that far, but I like to cut them. Okay, so next we're going to do the ones for the voltage regulator. Okay, for this next step, we're going to be installing the step-down voltage regulator. And there's your part number if you order from Pololu directly. Now, the nice thing about this is we are not going to need to bend pins. This comes with pre-bent pins, which is exactly what we need. So this little guy right there is what we need. All right, so to do this, I'm going to solder this together first, and then we're going to solder this to the board. And the reason for doing that is because I want to be able to get to these pins to cut them down so that they don't interfere with other components that are going to be really close. So this is going to be the same thing. Solder one pin, adjust it, and then solder the remainder. So there's our first pin. And we want to adjust this into place right like that. And that should be good. And we're going to go ahead and, sorry about that focus. Hit this pin here. And check our, that's perfect. That's exactly where I want that. And now we want to do the two interior pins. And there we go. Perfect. Perfect. Go ahead and check that we didn't bridge anything. That's perfect. So now we can get in here and cut these short. Now you want to be careful not to cut any of the components on the board off, because that would suck. Okay, so now that's cut so that none of those components are shorter or longer than, excuse me. So now that those are cut shorter than most of the components on the board, we can go ahead and solder this into the board here. And to do that, we want the components up and facing the 4 pins there. So if we're looking at the board from the top, the components are facing down, just like that. And much like before, we're gonna solder the first pin and then align everything. Okay, I'm going to twist this in just a pinch. Right there. And that is exactly where I want it. focus point has moved on me. Okay. And that is exactly where I want it. It's just a little bit tilted, but that will work. That'll work great. So the next things that we need to do is place 3 pins there, 2 pins there, and 2 pins there. So let's go ahead and do that now. The pins that they gave us with the voltage regulator, I'm just going to take one off, and that will be our 3. And we're going to place that right here, just like that. And we're going to attempt to hold this. Perfect. And I'm going to cut these pins short. And of course, many of you are probably laughing, but it is late and you are right. I never did the other pins for the voltage regulator. So let's do those. This 3, 1 there. And just want to double check. Perfect. One there. And this one here. And as long as that is in place, go ahead and trim them off. So as we look at the top of the board now, we got 2 there and 2 there. So let's place those. So I'm going to cut 2 and 2. There's 2. And there's 2. So these appear to be signal wires going to the tail end of the blaster. Looking good. And finally, the other 2 signal wires. Okay, so let's line that up and solder it in. Okay, so that's our populated board. Just to recap, we did our 2 resistors here. We put this strip of 4 here. We put a strip of 4 here with the Pololu voltage step-down regulator. We put a strip of 3. We put the MOSFET, and then we put 2 strips of 2 on either side there. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to solder on the power wires to the ESC. And those are going to go power there, ground there, power there, and ground there. And the way I'm going to do these is fit them from the top and then solder along the back, and then I might go back over here and solder from the front, but I doubt it. So we're going to start with this one. That's the power wire right there. So I'm going to hold this here and bring our power wire here, right there. And to do this, I think I'm going to switch tips. I'm going to switch to the T15D12. This is the chisel tip. It's a 1.2 millimeter chisel tip, and this is going to give us a little bit better heat getting this joint done. So once that heats up, we can clear this off. There we go, much better. Okay. I'm just holding this for a second for that to solidify. And that's our wire soldered in place. And as you can see, if you put enough solder, it comes through nicely on the other side. So the next, this negative wire is going to go right here, just like that. And I guess it would have been beneficial to check the length on these to make sure that they were indeed the right size, the right length rather, because it seems the power wire is just a pinch shorter. Alright, so we're going to solder that guy in place right there. Okay, so that's one ESC installed. We're going to repeat the same process for this other side. The next wire we want is the positive wire. It's going to come right through there. So to do this, I'm going to hold it with this one and hold the wire with this one. Perfect. And what I'm doing is just kind of heating up the wire and the pad, and then I'm adding solder to the wire, and then I'm actually adding solder to the pad, and that's all it takes. Easy as that. And this wire. Once again, heat the pad and the wire, add a little bit to the tip, and then add a little bit to the rest of the pad, and then slide off. Make sure your wire is in place though, just like that. And those are our ESCs installed. And when I'm done with the iron, I always add a little bit of solder to it. Keeps the tip longer. Okay, so the only thing that we have left to do to the power board is to actually add the power wires to it. The next thing that we're going to need is an XT60, and this is the male side. As you can see, the two male pins there. You might confuse this as a female side because this other side fits into it like this, but this is actually the female side. So we want the male side on the non-powered side, the female side on the battery side. And the reason for that is because on the battery side, it's not very easy to arc the contacts, where on the non-powered side, it's very easy to arc the contacts if you were to drop something in there, or this were to fall, or what have you. So this is the side that we're going to be soldering to this. The other thing that we're going to want is 16 gauge silicone coated wire. And if you've watched this channel for any length of time, you will know that anything I do, I love this silicone coated wire. It's very supple, it cuts easily, and it strips very easily. And it holds up to the abuse. The other thing that I love about it is you can hit it with as much heat from the soldering iron as you possibly care to hit it with, and it will not melt. If you use the regular plastic coated stuff, you barely get your solder joint done and the stuff is melted, which is bad when you're going to be putting wires this close together. You can get a short and not even know it. So with that, we're going to take this wire, and let's see how long I'm going to cut this. So I'm going to cut this wire to 5 inches or thereabouts. It doesn't need to be exact. And this is probably way too much wire anyways. And while I get the tape measure out, the wires on the ESC are about 3 3/4 inches. And the wires that I've used for the ESCs over here, if I were to measure that, it's right around 2 5/8, just a pinch longer. So really anything like 2 1/2 is going to be fine. And that puts your total length at 3 1/4, 3 3/8. And again, that's just, as long as they're somewhat close to this, it's not that important. So now when soldering, especially this side, because this plastic is so thin and there's a lot of it, and we're going to be forcing a lot of heat into this side, I always take the female section and fit it inside of here. And what that does is that keeps the plastic from shrinking in on itself after we make this solder joint. You just, again, want to pay attention to which side you're going to be soldering on. We want the longer of the two plastic sides once this is together. The other thing that we want to pay close attention to is right on the side here, there's a little negative mark and a little positive mark. So we want to make sure that we're keeping the polarity in the proper orientation. So I'm going to set this guy in the quad hands just like that, with the positive side up. The other thing that you can do if you want is you can actually take your pliers and spin these. If you take a closer look here, as you can see, one side is kind of nipped, and it's just, what it is just a piece of flat stock that's been drilled into, and then they hacked into it this way and then this way. So you can turn these so they're both flat. I don't, I leave them right where they're at. So again, we want the positive side up, and we want the longer plastic side. Just clip that in place there. And next, we're going to strip and pre-tin our wires. And for these larger gauge ones, I usually strip back about 1/4 inch and just like that. So once you've got that stripped, go ahead and pre-tin it. I'm going to use the T15D12, I believe it is. If I have that wrong, I'll annotate it there. It's definitely a 1.2 millimeter chisel tip. And we're just gonna heat this guy up a little bit. What I'm doing is applying solder to the iron, and then once it starts soaking into the wire, then I apply it to the wire. And that's it. So that one's set. We're gonna do the same thing with the negative lead, and we're gonna set that aside. Just like that. Same thing here. I heat up the wire a little bit, and we're going to apply solder to the iron, and then use that to make a good connection to the work, and then we can go into the work and just feed it right in, just like that. Super easy. Okay, so we're going to set that to the side. Next, we're going to check to see how well this fits in, and as you can see, that goes in very well. We're going to solder it right about there. So we're going to hold this right here, just in place like that. And now what I do here, a nice clean iron tip, is I hold the iron on the back of the XT60 just to warm it up just a pinch, and then I hold it on the wire and the XT60 at the same time. After a second or two, I just feed this right into the little slot, just like that. And what we're trying to do is get a nice flat fillet inside of that XT60, just like that. Just like that. Again, make sure your polarities are proper, and flip it over, and we'll do the negative. Right there. I'm gonna heat up the XT60 a little bit. Heat up both the XT60 and the wire. Tap the iron a couple times and feed it directly in. And I'm probably feeding 2 inches of solder into this, or so it feels like. It might only be an inch. And that's it. That's our 2 completed solder joints on our XT60. Now we're going to take some shrink tubing and cover those lines over. And for shrink tubing, I use this as a 3-to-1 shrink tube. If you want the part number or brand on that, there you go. And the one I'm using is, these are not labeled for size, but if I were to measure this, it's about 3/16 of an inch across. And these things shrink so much that the sizing really doesn't matter if it's an inch or metric. So for this guy, you want enough to kind of fit into that little slot there, and then I have it come out to about here. So cut about 1/2 inch from this, give or take. And we want the same out of the red. Just like that. Really push those guys up and in there. Especially now, because this is our last chance to do it before we heat them up. Alright, so I just make sure that those are really pressed right into there, just like that. And now we can heat this with a heat gun. And what I like about this kind is they have a heat activated glue. As you can see, it's starting to come out of the seams there, so those are gonna stay put. So we're set there. Now we can go ahead and strip these ends here. And we're not gonna strip quite as much. We're gonna strip maybe 1/8 of an inch, give or take. And I always twist the ends just to make sure that we have no stray wires. So if you do and you don't see them, especially when they're this tiny of a strand, you can accidentally bridge a couple of pads, and that's not good, especially when we're bridging the main power lines of a 3 or 4S battery. I think these are going to be 3S. So these we're going to pre-tin. And same thing here, just hold the iron on it, add a little bit of solder to the iron and allow it to touch the work, and that will transfer the heat into the work. And once you do that, then you can touch the opposite side of the work and allow the heat to drag your solder through the work. Just like that. And I'm trying to do these joints slow enough so that you guys can see them. Of course, they're out of focus, I apologize. Okay, so there's our two ends soldered, pre-tinned. Now we're gonna take our power board and go ahead and put these through. So we got, if we look at this here, we've got battery minus to the left and battery plus to the right. So we're gonna go ahead and do just that. Black in the negative and red in the positive. I'll go ahead and hold that in place. I'm gonna have the quad hands hold it and flip it over just like that. And now I'm gonna solder it from the back. And for this, heat the work, heat the wire and the pad at the same time. You can touch a little bit to the soldering iron just to make contact of both, and then just feed some wire into it, just like that. And repeat for the negative, just like that. I'm feeding probably 1 inch of solder into this. Very good. Okay, once we're done with that, we can cut those short. So that is our completed power board. We've got our XT60 in. And let me remove this now so you can see that. So there's our XT60 in to these two pins here. We wanted to make sure that we got the battery plus is your red wire and the battery minus is your black wire. Also make sure right here negative and positive is proper orientation, and then make sure all your other wires are proper. So for this next step, we're going to want the earlier mag well that we were working on. We're going to want our PC board and ESCs. We're going to want our ESC clamp. We're going to want a 6 by 1/2 inch screw, and the way to measure that is right from the base of the button head. This is a button head Phillips head, button head being the actual head of the screw, and the Phillips head being the driver. And the way to measure this is just from the bottom of the button head to the bottom of the screw, and that's a 1/2 inch. And the other thing that we're going to want is the ESC housing. So go ahead and grab your ESC housing, and you want to place this with this center line away from you. And next you want to grab your power board with the ESC wires facing away from you as well. And if you look in here, you'll actually see there's a nice little slot right there where this fits into. And cut all the way around the edge inside is a nice little slot that this fits right into. So go ahead and slide this guy right in place. And it'll it should click in place. Okay, so when placing this power board in there, make sure this back edge is pushed all the way down flat, and then you can slide it up forwards. Once you do that, it sits relatively nicely in that slot cut all the way around. That will allow this piece to slide right in there. You shouldn't have to force this. If you are forcing this, there's something wrong. So just know that that is how that's supposed to fit. If this is starting to bow, there's something wrong here. So make sure that's good. Once you get that in place, go ahead and run your number 6 screw right in place there. And then once we're done with that, grab your magwell. We're going to take our motor wires and slide them through the slots here. And then go ahead and line up your screw hole. As you can see, there's 3 screw holes here. These 3 screw holes will coincide, and I apologize for printing this out of black. There you go. So you can see the 3 screw holes, one right there, and then 2 here. We're going for this one, so line up for that one. And once it's lined up, you can screw it in place. Right about there. And this, I'm using a number 2 Phillips head for this. Okay, once that's in place, go ahead and put your ESCs to either side. Obviously, the left side here is going to go with the left side motor, and then the right side here is going to go with the right side motor. What we're going to do is grab our motor wires off the ESCs and go ahead and connect them to the motor wires. These don't matter how you connect them. If for some reason these motors don't spin the proper way, all you need to do is swap any 2 of these wires. And we want to make sure that these are not going to touch one another. These look like they're pretty good. This one could use a little help. As you can see, that's kind of sticking out. So I think what I'm going to do is go back with the heat gun, heat this up, and then press this together a little bit just to get the heat shrink over. So go ahead and do the other side as well. So like I was saying, if for some reason these motors don't spin the proper way, you could just take any 2 of these wires and swap them, and that will spin the motor the opposite way. Or later on, I will show you inside of BL Heli we can switch motor direction, and that's the way I usually do it. So I'm going to go and heat these up quick just to cover up these gaps. Okay, so what I've done here is just kind of heated these up a little bit and pushed the shrink tubing on there a little bit further, just so that these don't accidentally cross It shouldn't be an issue because they're going to lay flat next to one another, but just in case. So for this step, we want to grab our ESC clamp, and we want to grab two 6 by 32 by 1 inch screws. These are a button head with a Phillips head drive. Next thing we want to do is take our motor wires, and we want to fold these in place and place our ESC right on top. What we want to do here is get our motor wires underneath these main leads, because we want to make sure that we still have access to these pins here. And go ahead and kind of stuff those down there, and then just have this ESC signal wire off to the side. Repeat this process for both sides. I'll make sure we're not tangled up in these pins here. We can still access them, because that's where we're going to hook these signal wires a little bit later. The difference, we're not going to do it right now because we still need to flash these ESCs, and we're also going to need to change these ends. So just place them off to the sides for now. Then you can grab your ESC clamp and place that right on top, trying to make sure that you're not pinching any wires. And we want to bring these signal wires out the sides here, just like that. Once again, make sure we're not clamping anything down. We want to make sure that this large open square portion is over here. And as you can see, we have good access to all of our pins in there, except for this one here. I gotta push these motor wires down just a pinch, just to get in there a little bit better. So once everything's set there, and nothing is pinched, just like that. Something is pinched. There we go. Okay, so once we're all set with that, we can go ahead and run our screws in. We have one at the front and one at the back. And these we can run fairly snug. Nothing too crazy. You are threading into plastic. Okay, once you get those two screws tightened down and you've made sure that you're definitely not pinching any wires, we're going to go ahead and bring this inside to flash the ESCs. So to do that, we're going to need the DYS USB linker. And the way this works is it's a USB, and right here you got your servo port there. So pay special attention here. As you can see, we've got a 3-port setup here. We've got the white wire is our signal wire, and this black wire is our ground. And you can see here we got signal, positive, and ground. So we want our signal wire to go just like that. This is going to plug in there, and then we're going to power this. So I'll explain a little bit more of that coming up. I just wanted to place special emphasis on this right here, because when we're flashing it, we're going to have it in this configuration. As soon as we're done flashing it, we're going to come back out here and change. This is a 3-point pin header. We're going to change this to a 2-point pin header for these pins in here. So just know that that's a thing. Don't skip that later on, because you might have some issue. These can technically run without a ground wire, but let's do it right. With that said, let's go ahead and set this up. Now we're going to be doing one ESC at a time, even though we're going to be plugging the battery into both of them. We're just going to test one, then test the other, and adjust motor direction. So with that, let's go ahead inside. USB in the computer and power this. Now let's go to the programs that you're going to need. We want to download this driver right here. This is a CP210x USB to UART bridge, and to get that, you can go, if you're running Windows 10, you can grab that there. Windows 7, you can grab that there. This is you're definitely going to need this if you don't have it already. So go ahead and download this. Once you get that, then head over to here. This is the GitHub for BL Heli 32. This is actually called BL Heli Suite 32. and there's a real sketchy kind of thing here. You gotta click on this, and it brings you to a Google Drive, and then you can pick the zip file that you need for Linux, Linux 64. If you're running Windows, I believe this is the one here. And I'm not going to show you how to download and install these. Once you get the zip file, you extract it and then click on the, it's an application file, and go ahead and click on that and you can start it. The other thing that we're going to need for this is we want the INI files. So we're going to go to GitHub here for the FDL Blaster 3, and we want to go to ESC, and then underneath BLHeli32 you have this INI file right here. So go ahead and download this, and it's probably beneficial to clone or download the entire thing, because this gives you the bill of materials, the CAD files for all the printing, the firmware for some of the other stuff that we're going to need later on when we're building the actual trigger housing. There's even some PCB schematics and whatnot. So I download this. I suggest you do as well if you're going to be doing this project. So once you have that set somewhere in your computer that you know where it is, go ahead and initiate the BLHeli32. And once you've got that active, go ahead and plug in your DYS linker and plug your signal wire into that, and then go ahead and plug your battery in. So once you're in BLHeli32, go ahead to this menu item here. This is select BLHeli32 interface. And we want to go down here to the bootloader USB/COM port. Select that. Then go down here to COM ports and select the COM port that your right there it says Silicon Labs CP210. That's the one you want. Go ahead and click connect. Once you're connected, go ahead and read setup. It'll tell you that ESC 1 or 2 is, it's going to say 1 because you're only reading them one at a time. It's reading that successfully. Now, it's a good idea to go ahead, flash BLHeli, and you want to pick the latest firmware, which is, in this case, 32.6, and go hit OK. It's going to ask you again if you want to flash it. You hit OK again, and then it will flash the ESC. I'm not going to do that because I had just gone over and done that. Now, the difference here is the file that we have saved to go into ESC setup. This is where we're going to change the settings here. Go to read setup from INI file. This is what we saved from the GitHub earlier, and this is our file right here. It's wherever you saved it. Go to that file, and this is the whole tone dampening. This changes your ramp up power, your RPM, stuff like that. So go ahead and click on that, click open, and it's going to ask you, I believe it asks you if you want to let's actually do that. So select that there and then hit open, and what it's going to do is it's going to set all these settings for you. Once that's done, go ahead and click write setup, and it will go ahead and write setup, and it will reboot your ESC. It will tell you that the setup is written and you're good to go. At that point, you can disconnect both the power and disconnect the signal wire. Go ahead and connect the signal wire to the opposite ESC, reconnect the battery power, and then go ahead and do this whole process again. It's that easy. Alright, so now that we've got our ESCs flashed, we're going to connect our ESCs to the main power board. And to do that, as I said earlier, it's a 2-pin design instead of the 3-pin design. So what we're going to do is swap this out. As you can see, I've already done this one. So let's get you a closer look at this. So as you can see here, there's a couple of pins that we need to undo here. And to do that, I'm going to use a little screwdriver here, and I'm going to pry up underneath. There's a little plastic door, if you can see that. right there. There's a little plastic door that we want to pry up. To do that, this is just a little screwdriver, and just get this guy right underneath that, hold it in place, and then go ahead and pull your wire right out. Repeat that for the second one. So once you get those wires out of the Molex, go ahead and grab these guys, and here's the number here. This is from Pololu, and these are just a 2-pin as opposed to a 3-pin. So just grab 2 of these. We only need 1 for each side, and you can see that one end is beveled like this, and then one end is flat. This is the side that we throw the wires through, and then this beveled side is the side that we connect to our pins. So what we want to do here is just like this one, the side that has the holes in it, or the locking pins, we're going to put the white wire on the top. And to do that, and just grab the wire, stick it right in place, and you'll hear 2 clicks. Once you hear that second click, it is in place, just like that. Now, we want to take this and place this on the 2 pins that are located right in there. And just press firmly until it seats. Now we can take this ESC wire and just kind of fold it in place and tuck it up underneath there. Just like that. There you go, out of the way, neat, tidy. Next we can take our power lead, and I'm just gonna loop this back here, and then as you can see there's a couple of notches here, right there and there. We can go ahead and cinch this right there. And this really doesn't matter, it's totally temporary, it comes right off easily. So this next step, if you need to test these motors, because we do need to test the direction, you might want to skip this step, because if you do this step, you're going to be putting all this stuff on and then taking it off and then putting it back on. So just know that in advance. But if you are looking to just complete the front at this point, then let's go into the next step. So for this next step, we're going to want 2 6x32, these are 1/2-inch screws. Then we're going to want 6 of these. These are 6x32 by 3/8. Next, we're going to want the front top cowl. We're going to want the front lower cowl. We're going to want the top rail, and we're also going to want the front grip. So go ahead and grab or print those parts, and let's go right ahead. Grab our front cowl. This is the top one. It's got the lettering on it here. And if we look here, you'll see kind of a cutout here, and that coincides with this mark here and this mark here. So we're going to take this and kind of rock it in place just like that, so it captures in the front. Then we're going to take our 6x32 by 3/8 and place one right here. Grab our number 2 Phillips and run that all the way in. And flip it over and run the other one in here. You can go somewhat snug with these. Just remember, again, you are threading into plastic, and this portion here could snap easily. Next, grab your top rail, and as you can see, there's one end that's beveled slightly, and then the other end is flat. The flat side goes towards the back, and you can see there's 2 holes pre-made there. Grab your 6x32 by 3/8, and this will fit right in this little hole here. Go ahead and line it up and run the front one in. Front one's in, run the back one in. Okay, that's the top rail installed. next we're going to grab the bottom cowl, and this is a similar thing here. We've got the slices in there and there, which coincide with the nubs right here and right here. So we're going to do the same thing, is slide this on forwards, capture those right there, and then line up with the back here. Same thing here, 6x32 screw. Once that's in, flip it over, and another 6x32 right there. And this is, again, the last 3/8 inch screw. So next we want to grab the front grip. And if you look at this, you can see the back half is just flat and the front half is pointed. And we've got this guy here, fits right into here. So we'll take this and just slap that right in place. And once that's set, take a 6x32 by 1/2 inch and run it right there, holding it in place with one hand. Then flip it over, and the last screw right there. This is the 1/2 inch. So that's the completed FDL-3 40 nose. Again, the only thing that we need to do is take these 3 parts off to check our motor direction once we get the tail end of this done. But this thing is looking awesome already. Just absolutely awesome. And we covered a lot of ground in this. We installed the motors, we installed and flashed the ESCs, we did all the wiring up top. We're ready for this guy here. The other thing that we're going to have to do later is we've got some wiring that we're going to have to run from this to the tail. But that will be in another video. I think I'm going to try to do the nose, the tail, and on the tail, I think separately, I'm going to do the electrical components. So this might be a 3-part video. It might be more, it might be less, I don't know. But it is what it is, and I'll get them out when I can. So, but this is just looking awesome. So if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, if you are able to build this front end with this video, give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't done it already, go ahead and punch that subscribe button, because you only get to do it once, and it's fun. And I'll catch you later. Peace.